The clarification of thoughts came only on the second day of the war. On this day, the wife needed to visit a doctor to assess her condition after the surgery. On the way to the hospital and back, we saw many convoys of city ambulances going out of city and back. I realized that they were leaving the city to save our soldiers who are fighting right now. And by the number of these cars, I understood that things were awful. We began to think of what we could do and what we couldn't. We could leave Zaporizhia to some safe place with three of us, me, my wife, and the cat. But we couldn't convince our relatives to evacuate with us. We started to look for a place to evacuate. Fortunately, we found a website developed by Ukrainian IT specialists. It proposed contacts of people from the central and western regions of Ukraine who wanted to offer free temporary housing to refugees. I was at the same time very surprised, grateful, and proud of my country and its citizens, how united they became on the second day of the full-scale war. The fact is, on February 22, my wife and I were looking at some housing in the west of Ukraine in order to rent it for a while to wait out the troubling times that are coming. And then we saw that there was almost no housing left anywhere. There were only few offers for crazy money. And here, on the second day of the war, volunteers created a website with tens of thousands of offers of free sheltering from engaged citizens. It was there where we found shelter in the first days of the war, but the last days together. I hope it's not the last at all. So, in about 15 minutes, we found people who were willing to provide shelter with an animal. It was a family of village teachers in the Vinnytsia region. We went there the next day, having collected the most valuable things that can be placed in a small car, along with 3 fuel canisters. The road to the destination was supposed to take 9 hours, so we departed in the early morning. Our road went through the city of Uman, which was under a massive rocket fire that day, so all the roads around the city were blocked. We had to go by safer roads, so the trip there took about 13 hours. The other path was much longer, as there were countless checkpoints. They were needed not only for checking documents, but also for searching saboteurs and protecting military convoys. I want to describe a little what the checkpoints looked like, because civilians can imagine that there is only a policeman checking documents. But in wartime, they were entire fortified areas with concrete blocks and military vehicles. At that time, there were young soldiers of the armed force of Ukraine at the checkpoints. I remember how it hurt me when I looked at them. I understood that now many of the same young guys are dying on the battlefield defending our country. And it hurt me more even to imagine that the guy who checked us at the checkpoint and wished us a good trip could die very soon. By the way, there were much more checkpoints in the villages. We had to learn this when we had to make a detour because another city on our way was hit by missiles. Also, we had one advantage. We had been driving for about 6 hours and I wanted to go to the toilet, so we stopped at the first gas station on our way. Surprisingly, gasoline was available there, but there was no queue. It was incredible because on the first day of the war, all gas stations were either without fuel or with huge queues. We refueled with another 20 liters, but it turned out that the toilet was not working. So I decided to do it further along the road, turning towards to the forest strip. That's what I did, but when I returned to the car, the police approached us. The policeman said that they catch saboteurs here, so we shouldn't stop along the road. They began to ask questions, why we stopped there, where we were coming from, and so on. After my explanations, they gave me the following advice. What would be normal in peacetime can be dangerous in wartime. I think I will remember these words for the rest of my life. At least because my wife will make fun of me when I remember this story. As you could understand, I didn't go to the toilet again until we reached our destination. It was very hard for our cat to bear such a long trip in general. He is very afraid to go outside, probably because he has lived there for a while and he didn't like it. But he bravely endured the whole trip because he understood that we are all together and we will not leave him alone. As for us, I was sick at the time and my wife was after the surgery, so we overcome this path only through stress and pills. We arrived at our destination very late in the evening. The owners welcomed us hospitably, sheltered us in a room, and generally treated us like their own children. We are very grateful to these people for their help in such a difficult time. Now we were able to think about everything more calmly and decide what to do next, because it was necessary to leave somehow and decide something. I still wanted my wife to go to Poland, so we began to monitor the situation at the border. We also closely followed the news about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Then there was no front as such. Fighting was going everywhere. Russian troops were approaching Kiev, Kharkiv, Sumy, Chernihiv, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. Enemy troops began to surround the half-million city of Mariupol. Battles also took place in the information front. Google Maps revealed hundreds of recently created farming geotags, which were located near city halls, hotels, and government offices. Of course, everyone thought it was the coordinates for adjusting missile strikes. Therefore, all Ukrainians also waged the cyber struggle against similar measures of the enemy. Moreover, in parallel with these cyber attacks, our IT specialists continued to work. My wife also worked then, despite all the events that were happening around us in our country. Therefore, I can confidently say that it is a shame for those Western companies that refused to cooperate with Ukrainian IT companies during the war. I don't know where else in the world you can find such a reliable partners as in Ukraine. In addition, there was news from my native Zaporizhia. Air raid sirens sounded constantly in the city. People slept in the corridors, and explosions in the region were even heard on the southern outskirts. Evacuation trains were organized, which were filled 4 times more than they were designed for. But there was no way out. People had to be evacuated, especially since only women, children, and the elderly were allowed on such trains. And the city itself was turned into a fortress. There were fortified areas for defense in case the enemy did reach the city. And then there was no certainty that Russian troops would not reach Zaporizhia. Moreover, the Russians made an attempt to seize the Dnipro HES, hydroelectric power plant, with the help of helicopter landings. Fortunately, they did not succeed. At this pace, 4 days passed, and the time came when I managed to persuade my wife to go to Poland. Then it became known that pets are allowed cross the border even without the necessary documents. Of course, without me, because I did not have permission to leave the country during the war. I reassured her as best I could, telling her that everything would be fine with me. The war would end soon, and we would be together, we just had to wait. And I wasn't lying to her, I was just telling her what I needed to say to get her to go abroad and be safe. She didn't believe me either, but she understood that there was no other way out. So it was better to her to agree with me. I guess the only thing we both believed was that it would be much easier for me to survive than if I had to worry about the safety of my family. So the decision was made, and on the 1st of March, we left our temporary shelter. And also, we were sheltered for free. We still left a small amount of money to gratitude for helping us in a difficult time. Of course, they wouldn't take it from us, so we just left the money in the room and told them about it when we left home. By the way, before leaving, we used up the first canister of fuel because there was absolutely no gas either in the village or nearby. The way to the border was calmer. Also, there were several traffic jams in front of the checkpoints. We reached the border in 8 hours. There was still no gas at the gas stations, so we used up the second can. The cat was also calmer and even talked to us to stop when he needed to go to the toilet. Also, we picked up another woman who was also going to Poland. I don't even remember how exactly it happened, because this chain that brought her to us seemed somehow unreal. But, of course, we did not refuse. Then, in general, people tried to help each other in some incredible format. For example, when we were not far from the border, volunteers approached us at one of the checkpoints. At first, we thought that they would ask for donations for the armed forces. But while we were in a village in the Vinnytsia region, we donated almost everything left in our bank cards and were unable to do more, so we were preparing to explain it to them. But they unexpectedly offered us free hot food and tea. Such a unity of people was unusual for me. I did not expect that the war would unite people so much. Then I was understood that the war destroyed our lives, but united the whole country. A little later, we reached the checkpoint on the border between Ukraine and Poland. There were the hardest times in my life. And even the queue in which we were for another 8 hours was not so hardest test. The hardest thing was realizing that right here and now I would see my wife and cat for the last time. It seems that the cat was even more aware of this than I was, because when I got out of the car to go to the toilet or just outside, he meowed very loudly and ran around the car looking for me. And when I got into the car again, he climbed on my lap and purred. He didn't want to leave us, neither did my wife, nor did I. But there was no way out. I managed to get them to the customs itself. There, the border guards told me that I can't go any further. So I quickly said goodbye to my wife, said I love her, kissed her the last time, took my backpack with things and food, and left. Suppressing tears, I left my relatives and went to my death. Because then I really believed that I would return to my native city where I would die defending it.